A state of emergency has been declared in the US state of Baltimore, with 6 people still unaccounted for after a major bridge collapsed into a river early this morning. A huge search operation is now underway for those who are missing. They're believed to be part of a construction crew working on the Francis Scott Key Bridge at the time of the incident. Officials say 2 people have already been found. One was taken to hospital and the other was uninjured. This all happened when a cargo ship, which was trying to pass through the bridge, hit one of the columns holding the bridge up. That led to the 1.6-mile-long structure snapping and plunging into the Patapsco River at high speed. In a press conference in the last couple of hours, the governor of Maryland declared, "Our state is in shock."
And our response teams are doing everything in our power to rescue and recover the victims of this collapse, literally as we speak. People who, as we speak, are out there are divers, are air assets, people who right now are working to save lives and are doing it because the state asked. I recognize that many of us are hurting right now. I recognize that many of us are scared right now. And so I want to be very clear about where everything stands. We are still investigating what happened, but we are quickly gathering details. The preliminary investigation points to an accident. We haven't seen any credible evidence of a terrorist attack.
Joining me now are Harriet Alexander, the senior US features reporter for The Times, Sean Keyes, who's the managing director of Sutcliffe, a civil engineering firm, and the former director of the Irish Coast Guard, Chris Reynolds. Thank you all very much indeed for joining me. Why don't we start with Harriet, who can just, I hope, set the scene and explain how such an extraordinary thing, or at least it seems extraordinary, maybe you gentlemen will go on to say it isn't, but to all people watching this film, it's quite remarkable. Harriet, how such a thing could possibly have occurred?
Well, what we know so far is that this ship, it's a fairly large vessel. It's about 948 feet long. It left the harbour 20 minutes before the collision, and it was bound for Sri Lanka. It was being piloted, and it's believed that it actually lost power just moments before it collided with this pylon that was supporting the bridge, and they were able to give a mayday call, which it seems like has saved an awful lot of lives.
And can you explain how the call saved lives? I understand that it led to people being stopped from driving onto the bridge. Is that what happened?
Yes, that's right. So this is a very busy ring road. It goes all around around Baltimore itself, but it did happen at 1:20 in the morning, which I think was a real godsend because it stopped it being so busy as it would be normally. So yes, they did close down parts of the bridge, and that prevented it from being a far worse tragedy.
So are we believing at this point, Harriet, that the pilots, the 2 of them who were piloting this ship through, lost control somehow, or they didn't see the pylon, or what do we think could have happened to cause this?
We think, yes, that they actually did lose power, and that would mean that they lost the steering of this. Of course, something of this size is incredibly difficult to maneuver, and if you lose the power, there's very little that you actually can do. So that is what the thinking is for now, that it was a problem with the power. This does happen. It shouldn't happen. But this is what we believe to be the case now.
And what's clear is that there were construction teams working on the bridge, and as you correctly point out, it was the middle of the night, so that was the safest and best time for work to be done on the bridge. But they're very clear and keen to point out, aren't they, that it had nothing to do with the construction of the bridge, only kind of maintenance was going on.
Yes, that's right. So 2 people have been rescued from the water. One of them was described as being in a very serious condition and has been taken to hospital. The other person was okay and said that he didn't need to go to hospital. And yes, there were construction crews there. The 6 people who are believed to be missing, we do think are construction workers. But yes, I mean, this bridge was up to code, the authorities have said. It was built in the 1970s, but that doesn't make it particularly old. There's not known to be any real issues with the bridge, so it was just one of these awful sort of circumstances all coming together.
Let me bring Sean Keys into this conversation, MD of Sutcliffe, which is a multidisciplinary firm of structural and civil engineers. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Sean. So we understand that this large vessel crashed at some speed into... Is it correct to describe it as a column, or what would you describe it as? One of the crucial elements of the engineering of the bridge that was effectively supporting the bridge. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I would describe it as a column, and it's a support that takes the whole weight of the bridge. I think one of the things that we're talking about is that it's the impact from the cargo ship is literally enormous. So a cargo ship would weigh about 165,000 tons, which is the equivalent of maybe 4 to 10,000 heavy goods vehicles hitting a structure even at a relatively low speed. So I think it's the sheer weight of the cargo ship hitting the pylon or the column that's caused the problem.
I think one of the words, Sean, that's kind of the most vivid and dramatic in all of the descriptions of what happened, and we can see it with our own eyes anyway, so you can kind of see the drama as it unfolds. It's quite an extraordinary spectacle to behold. But the word that's really kind of the most vivid and, I think, shocking is the word snapped. They keep saying, and the bridge snapped. And I think people just think, hang on, what? You know, in this day and age, I think the bridge is 47 years old. How can a bridge snap? But you'll explain. How does a bridge snap?
Well, everything can snap and break. It just depends how much you load it. So in the UK, we design structures, particularly footbridges and smaller structures for accidental loading that would equate to something like 50 tons. So we would design a bridge to be hit in the UK over a road, for instance, and it can resist a force of 50 tons, which is enormous, like a heavy goods vehicle hitting it. But we're talking something here that's 165,000 tons. So everything has a point at which it breaks. And this bridge clearly wouldn't have been designed to be hit at any speed by a fully laden cargo ship. So the word snap's not a very good word. The one thing that I'm a little bit uncomfortable about is the level of the catastrophic collapse, that the whole thing has collapsed as one support has collapsed. So when you look at the video, and I really feel for anybody who's been involved in this, but you can see that 3 decks of the bridge collapse. It's not a localized failure, but it's the 2 adjacent decks and the deck that's furthest away. So it's a huge length of bridge deck that's fallen into the river.
So when you say you're not comfortable with it, what do you mean?
I wish the collapse had been smaller. So
I still don't know what you mean. Do you feel that there's something awry or something that you
No,
wouldn't
I don't
have
think there's
expected?
anything wrong with it. It's just ideally an engineer would design something that if it has an accident, that you'd only get localized failures. But I think the sheer size of the ship has meant that the effect has had a domino effect, and it's caused an adjacent bay to fall. But what would have happened if this ship was much smaller? So if this had been just a normal pilot's ship or a smaller ship, there might have been some localized failures around the supports to the bridge, but maybe the deck didn't fall, the whole deck didn't fall into the sea. But it's just the sheer size of the cargo ship that's caused it to have this domino effect and affect adjacent bays.
Let me bring in Chris Reynolds to the conversation, former director of the Irish Coast Guard. Chris, thank you for being here. I believe there's a kind of protocol, certainly in the United Kingdom, when it comes to guiding large vessels under bridges, and that the Coast Guard are perpetually involved in this. They're not just left to guide themselves in or have their crew guide them in. Is that correct?
Generally speaking, that's correct. In confined waters, you have a vessel traffic system that will be controlled basically like an air traffic control system. There is in Baltimore no similar system that I know of.
Right.
However, I have to say it wouldn't have made a difference in this position. Just looking at the transponder details and the information that's available on CCTV, it's very clear that the ship lost its generators. Losing generators lost steerage. It quickly recovered the generators and then lost them again very, very quickly, and then lost steerage very quickly. It then drifted hard to starboard. The captain went full astern, but it was too late. So even under a operational control of the vessel traffic system, that accident probably would have still happened.
When you say, Chris, the ship lost its steerage, then it recovered its generators, then it lost it again, how common is it for a vessel of that size to lose steerage? Is that something that very rarely happens, or something that often happens?
It's something that shouldn't happen.
Right.
Unfortunately, it does happen, and certainly ships I've been on, it has happened. And it's the National Transport Investigation will look at all these issues, including the speed of the ship. Should the ship have dropped an anchor, like they would have a crew closed up in the forecastle that could let go an anchor really quickly. There's a whole lot of questions that will now be asked. But at the moment, it's all about saving life.